the soft beep of a heart monitor mixed with the quiet hum of voices in the hallway. Lisa Henderson looked up from the patient chart she was reviewing, her eyes burning from too many hours staring at small print. Working the day shift at Pine Creek Medical Center wasn't glamorous, but she loved being a nurse. Today was Wednesday, which meant she'd be home in time to help her son Aiden with his science project, a model of the solar system they'd been working on all week. The phone in her pocket buzzed. Probably the pharmacy calling about Mrs. Wilson's medication, she thought. But when she glanced at the screen, she saw Westfield Elementary flashing across it. A small knot formed in her stomach. The school never called unless something was wrong. "Hello, this is Lisa," she answered, already moving toward a quiet corner of the nurse's station. "Mrs. Henderson?" The voice belonged to Principal Reynolds. Something was off. His normally confident tone wavered slightly. "There's been an accident involving Aiden." The world seemed to slow down around her. Sounds faded as blood rushed in. Her ears. What happened? Is he okay? Lisa gripped the phone tighter, her knuckles turning white. He fell from the playground equipment during recess. He hit his head on the ground. The paramedics are here now. He's unconscious and they're taking him to Memorial Hospital downtown. Lisa's training kicked in, pushing panic aside temporarily. "I'm on my way. Tell them I'm a nurse at Pine Creek. I'll be there in 15 minutes. She barely remembered telling her supervisor, grabbing her purse or running to her car. The drive that normally took 20 minutes passed in a blur of red lights, horns, and prayer. "Please let him be okay. Please. He's only 10. Please." When she pulled into the emergency entrance, she spotted the ambulance. Her heart sank when she saw they were still working on someone inside. She knew that wasn't a good sign. If they hadn't unloaded yet, it meant they were stabilizing before moving. Lisa parked haphazardly and ran toward the vehicle. Her nurse ID badge clutched in her hand like a shield. "That's my son. I'm his mother." A paramedic turned toward her, his face serious but kind. "Mrs. Henderson, we're taking good care of him. We're about to move him inside." "What happened? How bad is it?" Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, thin and tight. "He has a severe head injury. He's still unconscious. His pupils are reactive but sluggish. BP is elevated, which could indicate increased intracranial pressure." Lisa knew exactly what that meant, and it terrified her. Brain swelling, possible bleeding inside the skull. Every horrible scenario she'd ever witnessed as a nurse flashed through her mind. But now it was her child on the stretcher. They wheeled Aiden out of the ambulance. His small body looked so fragile, his face pale beneath an oxygen mask. A neck. Brace held his head still. A line of blood had dried along his temple. His favorite blue dinosaur t-shirt had been cut away to attach monitoring equipment. "Aiden, baby, mommy's here," she whispered, walking alongside the stretcher, reaching for his hand. His fingers were cold. Inside, the emergency room team took over, moving with the practiced precision that Lisa herself had been part of hundreds of times. But being on this side of the curtain changed everything. Each medical term they called out was a dagger to her heart. GCS 7. Pupils equal but sluggish. Possible basilar skull fracture. CT scan stat. Notify neurosurgery. Dr. Patel, the emergency physician, approached after the initial assessment. Her dark eyes were serious behind her glasses. "Lisa, I know you understand what's happening. The fall caused a significant head injury. There's likely bleeding and swelling in his brain. We need to get scans immediately to see what we're dealing with." Lisa nodded, struggling to maintain composure. "What happened at the school? Did anyone see?" From what the school told paramedics, he was climbing on the jungle gym and lost his grip, fell about 8 feet and landed on his head. A teacher was right there and called 911 immediately. 8 feet. Onto his head, on the hard playground surface. Lisa felt sick. "Can I go with him for the CT?" she asked, knowing the answer, but hoping. Anyway, Dr. Patel shook her head. "I'm sorry, you know we can't allow that, but we'll be quick. Jenna will stay with you." She nodded toward a nurse that Lisa recognized from professional events. The next 45 minutes were the longest of Lisa's life. She called Tom, Aiden's father, leaving a voicemail when he didn't answer. They'd been divorced for 3 years and he worked as a software engineer in Seattle, clear across the country. She texted her mother, who promised to come right away, from her home an hour outside the city. When Dr. Patel returned with Dr. Nguyen, the neurosurgeon, Lisa knew before they spoke that the news wasn't good. Their faces held that careful neutrality that medical professionals perfect when delivering difficult information. "Lisa," Dr. Nguyen began, sitting down beside her. "Aiden has a severe traumatic brain injury. There's bleeding inside his brain and significant swelling. We need to perform surgery immediately to relieve the pressure and stop the bleeding. Will he?" Lisa couldn't finish the question. Dr. Nguyen's eyes softened. "He's young and was perfectly healthy before this. That gives him advantages many patients don't have. But I need to be honest with you, this is very serious. After surgery, we'll need to keep him in a medically induced coma to give his brain time to heal and the swelling to go down." "For how long?" Lisa whispered. "It's hard to say. Days, maybe a week. We'll monitor him constantly and bring him out of it as soon as it's safe." Lisa nodded, tears finally spilling over. "Can I see him before surgery?" They led her to the trauma bay where Aiden lay already prepped for surgery. Tubes and wires connected his small body to machines that beeped and hummed. His head had been partially shaved where they would make the incision. Lisa leaned down, careful not to disturb any of the equipment, and pressed her lips to his forehead. "Fight, baby," she whispered. "Mommy's right here. I'm not going anywhere. You fight hard, okay?" The surgery lasted 5 hours. Lisa sat in the waiting room, clutching the small dinosaur keychain from Aiden's backpack that a kind nurse had brought from his belongings. Her mother arrived, bringing Lisa's overnight bag from home and a steady stream of coffee. Tom called back, panic in his voice, promising to be on the next flight out. Dr. Nguyen appeared, still in his surgical scrubs, looking tired but composed. "We've stopped the bleeding and placed a drain to help with the pressure. He made it through." "Surgery, which is the first hurdle, cleared. When will he wake up?" Lisa asked. "We're not going to let him wake up yet," Dr. Nguyen explained gently. "We've placed him in a medically induced coma to give his brain the best chance to heal. The next 48 hours will tell us a lot." In the pediatric ICU, Aiden looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, bandages wrapped around his head. A breathing tube connected to a ventilator helped him breathe. Monitors tracked every heartbeat, every breath, every fluctuation in brain activity. Lisa pulled a chair close to his bedside and took his hand, careful of the IV lines. The rhythmic sounds of the machines became a terrible lullaby. She thought about that morning, how she'd made him pancakes in the shape of rockets, how he'd laughed when he couldn't find his left shoe, only to discover the cat sleeping on it, how he'd hugged her goodbye at the bus stop and said, "Love you to Pluto and back, Mom." Had that only been this morning? It felt like years ago. "I'm right here, Aiden," she said quietly. "I'm not going anywhere." A nurse came in to check his vitals and adjust his medications. "You should try to rest," she told Lisa kindly. "There's a recliner in the corner that folds out. We can bring you a blanket." Lisa shook her head. "I can't sleep. Not yet." "I understand. But remember, this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. He needs you strong." As night fell outside the window, Lisa held her son's hand and watched the monitors. Each steady beep was a small victory, proof that he was still fighting. She didn't know then that the days would stretch into weeks, that maybe a week would become 30 long days. She only knew that her son was alive, and as long as he was breathing, there was hope. None of the doctors or nurses said what Lisa already understood from years of experience. The longer a patient stayed in a coma, the less likely they were to wake up unchanged, or to wake up at all. But that was tomorrow's worry. Tonight she would simply watch over her son and will him to heal. "Come back to me," she whispered as the monitors beeped their steady rhythm in the darkened room. However long it takes, I'll be right here waiting. Lisa woke with a start, momentarily confused by the mechanical beeping and the stiffness in her neck. For a split second she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back as her eyes found Aiden, still motionless in the hospital bed. Day 2. The Pediatric ICU had its own rhythm, she'd discovered. Shift changes at 7, medication rounds every few hours, neurological checks constant, doctors making rounds just after 8. She'd already memorized it all, trying to create some sense of structure in a world suddenly spinning out of control. "Morning," said Nurse Becky, slipping into the room. Her voice was gentle but carried that practiced cheerfulness of medical staff who deal with heartbreak daily. "How are we doing today?" Lisa managed a weak smile. "Any change overnight?" His intracranial pressure readings dropped slightly, which is a good sign. Dr. Nguyen will be by soon to talk about the latest scans. Good signs. Lisa clung to those words like a lifeline. In the strange new landscape of her life, she'd learned to treasure tiny victories, stable readings, a slight improvement in a lab value, Aiden's skin feeling a bit warmer under her touch. Tom arrived at 10, unshaven and red-eyed from his overnight flight. Their divorce 3 years ago had been messy but not hostile. A slow unraveling of two people who'd married too young and grown in different directions. Now, as he hesitated in the doorway, none of that seemed to matter. "How is he?" Tom asked, his voice breaking as he stared at their son. Lisa stood and, without thinking, hugged her ex-husband. "Stable. They say the surgery went well, but it's still touch and go." Tom approached the bed cautiously, as if afraid his presence might somehow disturb the delicate balance keeping Aiden alive. He reached out, then pulled back his hand. "You can touch him," Lisa said softly. "Talk to him. They say he might be able to hear us." Tom carefully took Aiden's hand, mindful of the IV line. "Hey, buddy, Dad's here. I came as soon as I heard." His voice wobbled. "You gave us quite a scare." Dr. Nguyen arrived for rounds, explaining the latest scans in his calm, methodical way. The bleeding had stopped. The drain was working. The swelling hadn't gotten worse. All cautiously. Good news. "When will you bring him out of the coma?" Tom asked. "Not yet," Dr. Nguyen replied. "His brain needs more time to heal. The medications are protecting him right now, letting his brain rest. We'll do another scan in 48 hours and reassess." Days began to blur together. Lisa took an extended medical leave from the hospital. Her supervisor, understanding all too well what she was facing, arranged everything. "Your job will be here when you're ready," she'd assured Lisa. "Focus on your son now." Lisa and Tom fell into an uneasy routine. She took the day shift. He took nights. They rarely overlapped, exchanging brief updates in the hallway or cafeteria. Sometimes on particularly hard days, they sat together in silence, united in fear. By day 7, the doctors had hoped to begin reducing Aiden's sedation. Instead, a new scan showed lingering swelling that concerned Dr. Nguyen. "We need to give it more time," he explained, pointing to shadowy areas on the brain scan. "Rushing this process could cause setbacks we want to avoid." "But he's been under for a week now," Lisa said, the worry evident in her voice. As a nurse, she knew what each passing day might mean. "I understand your concern," Dr. Nguyen said gently. "But right now, patience is our ally. His young brain has remarkable healing capabilities. We just need to give it the time it needs." On day 10, Lisa began reading to Aiden. She brought his dog-eared copy of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. They had been halfway through it before the accident. Every afternoon she read a chapter, her voice growing stronger as the words transported her temporarily away from the antiseptic smell and mechanical beeps. "I brought something else today," she told the silent Aiden one afternoon, pulling out her phone. "Remember this playlist you made for our road trip last summer? You said it had only the most epic songs ever." She smiled at the memory, placing the phone on his pillow and hitting play. The opening notes of his favorite song filled the room. The nurses encouraged these efforts. "Keep talking to him," they said. "Keep him connected to his world." Some days were harder than others. On day 14, when another scan showed only minimal improvement, Lisa escaped to the hospital chapel and finally allowed herself to sob. Deep, wrenching cries that shook her entire body. An elderly volunteer handed her tissues without a word and simply sat beside her, a quiet presence amid the storm of grief. Tom brought Aiden's science project to the hospital, the half-finished solar system model they'd been working on. I thought, we could finish it for him, he suggested, setting up the materials on the small table by the window. They worked together quietly, painting tiny planets and stringing them in their proper orbits. Remember how obsessed he was with space after that planetarium field trip? Tom asked, carefully adding rings to Saturn. Lisa nodded, smiling despite her exhaustion. He asked for a telescope for Christmas and then stayed up all night even though it was freezing. These small moments of normalcy felt precious amid the clinical discussions and medical jargon that now dominated their lives. Day 18 brought a small milestone. Aiden was taken off the ventilator and placed on a less invasive breathing support. His body was now strong enough to initiate breaths on its own, though the doctors maintained the medically induced coma. This is progress, Dr. Nguyen assured them. His body is showing resilience. Lisa allowed herself a sliver of hope. That night, she finally accepted the hospital social worker's offer to arrange temporary housing nearby instead of sleeping in the uncomfortable recliner. A local organization for families of pediatric patients had a small apartment just 2 blocks from the hospital. You need real sleep, the social worker insisted. You need to shower in a real shower, eat a proper meal, and lie in an actual bed. You can be back at his side in 3 minutes if needed. The simple apartment felt like luxury after 18 days of hospital living. Lisa stood under the hot shower until the water ran cold, then fell into bed and slept for 6 uninterrupted hours, the longest stretch since the accident. When she returned to the hospital, refreshed from actual sleep and home-cooked food brought by her mother, the charge nurse greeted her with a smile. His EEG showed increased activity overnight. Dr. Nguyen is very pleased. Small victories, tiny steps forward. By day 21, Lisa had established new routines. Mornings began with updates from the night nurse, followed by Aiden's physical therapy, gentle movements and positioning to prevent muscle atrophy and joint stiffness. She participated in these sessions, learning the exercises so she could continue them throughout the day. In the afternoons, she read to him and played his music. She talked about school, his friends, their cat Rocket, who was being spoiled rotten by Grandma. She described the weather, the changing leaves, the world continuing outside his window. Mrs. Chen from next door asks about you every day, she told him, massaging lotion into his hands. She says her garden isn't the same without you stopping by to chat about her tomatoes. The doctors began to use phrases like long-term care planning and rehabilitation options. No one said what Lisa understood all too clearly. The longer Aiden remained unconscious, the more uncertain his recovery became. Day 25 dawned gray and rainy. It was Aiden's birthday, 10 years old. Lisa had imagined a backyard party, with his friends, the superhero cake he'd requested, presents wrapped in comic book paper. Instead, she tied a single balloon to his bed and placed a cupcake with an unlit candle on his bedside table. Tom arrived with a small gift bag. I got him that space encyclopedia he wanted, he said, his voice hollow. He placed it on the windowsill, alongside get-well cards from Aiden's classmates and teachers. They sang happy birthday softly, their voices breaking on the final notes. Lisa leaned down and kissed Aiden's forehead, which had finally healed where they'd removed the drain. Happy birthday, sweet boy, she whispered. Come back to us soon. That night, after Tom left for a quick dinner, Lisa held Aiden's hand and finally voiced her deepest fear. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. I'm scared you might not come back to me, at least not the way you were. And I want you to know that's okay. However you come back, whatever that looks like, I'll be here. I'll learn whatever new normal we need. Nurse Valerie found her crying softly, still holding Aiden's hand. Without a word, she guided Lisa to the family room and made her tea. They sat together in the quiet room, and Valerie simply listened as Lisa poured out stories of Aiden, his kindness to younger kids, his terrible jokes, the way he left his socks everywhere but never in the hamper. I just want to hear him call me Mom again, Lisa whispered, Just one more time. Neither of them knew that in 5 more days, that simple wish would be granted. Day 26 arrived with no fanfare, just the usual beeping of monitors and the soft squeak of nurses' shoes on the polished floor. Lisa stirred from her light sleep in the recliner, her body now somehow accustomed to the uncomfortable position. Outside, dawn was breaking, painting the sky in gentle pinks and oranges that she could just make out through the half-closed blinds. "Morning, buddy," she said to Aiden, her voice still rough with sleep. This daily greeting had become a ritual, a small act of normalcy in a situation that was anything but normal. "It's Tuesday, Taco Tuesday. Remember how you always wanted to go to that food truck by the park on Tuesdays?" Nurse Miguel entered with his usual warm smile, already checking the monitors with practiced efficiency. "His vitals are steady today," he noted, jotting numbers on his chart. "Any changes overnight?" Lisa shook her head. The question and answer were part of their daily routine now, though she'd stopped expecting positive news. Hope was a dangerous thing after so many days of stillness. "Dr. Nguyen wants another EEG today," Miguel mentioned. "They'll come get him around 11. Lisa nodded, reaching for her bag to pull out her hairbrush. She'd learned to manage basics, hygiene in the tiny hospital bathroom, washing her face, brushing her teeth, changing clothes. Small routines that helped her feel human amid the sterile environment. "I'll be here," she said, though there was no need. Everyone on the pediatric ICU floor knew Lisa rarely left Aiden's side. After Miguel left, Lisa continued her morning routine with Aiden. She gently wiped his face with a warm, damp cloth, carefully avoiding the healing scars where tubes had once been. She brushed his hair, which had grown back unevenly around the surgical site. She applied chapstick to his dry lips and lotion to his hands and arms. "Your classroom sent a new batch of cards yesterday," she told him, gesturing to the colorful pile on the windowsill. "Mrs. Thompson says they're keeping your desk just as you left it. Cam gave his book report on that dinosaur encyclopedia you both liked. He said he wishes you were there because you know way more dinosaur facts than he does." Lisa read a few of the cards aloud, smiling at the messy handwriting and misspelled words of Aiden's 4th-grade classmates. Their innocent messages of "get better soon" and "we miss you" carried a simplicity she envied. To them, Aiden was just sick and would come back when he felt better, like after a bad cold or broken arm. Tom arrived around 9, carrying 2 coffee cups and a paper bag. "Brought you a decent coffee and one of those almond croissants you like," he said, setting them on the small table. "Any news?" Lisa shook her head, accepting the coffee gratefully. Hospital cafeteria coffee was somehow both too weak and too bitter. "EEG scheduled for 11, she said between sips. "Dr. Nguyen will probably come by after to discuss the results." They sat in companionable silence, a new normal they'd found in the shared space of worry. The awkwardness of their failed marriage had been set aside in the face of something far more important. "I was thinking," Tom said hesitantly, "maybe we could bring some of his Lego sets from home. Something familiar to have around him." Lisa nodded. "That's a good idea. Maybe the space station one he was working on." Around 11, technicians came to take Aiden for his EEG. Lisa walked alongside the bed until they reached the testing area. "I'll be right here when you get back," she promised, kissing his forehead before stepping back. While Aiden was gone, Lisa wandered to the family lounge. Needing a change of scenery, she found Carla there, the mother of a teenage girl recovering from brain surgery 2 rooms down from Aiden. "How's Joey today?" Lisa asked, pouring herself a cup of tea from the communal pot. Carla's tired face brightened slightly. She squeezed, "My hand this morning. The doctors say it's a reflex, but I swear she knew it was me." Lisa smiled, genuinely happy for the small victory. "That's wonderful." "And Aiden?" Carla asked gently. "Same," Lisa replied, the single word carrying the weight of 26 unchanging days. "They're doing another EEG now." Carla reached across the table and squeezed Lisa's hand. No words were needed between them. The shared experience of watching Your child fight for their life created a bond that needed no explanation. When Lisa returned to Aiden's room, Dr. Nguyen was already there, studying the fresh EEG results on his tablet. His expression gave nothing away, the professional mask firmly in place. "How was it?" Lisa asked, her heart speeding up slightly. She'd learned to read the subtle cues of medical staff, the way they stood, how quickly they spoke, whether they made eye contact. "There are some changes from the last test," Dr. Nguyen said carefully. "Small increases in certain types of brain activity." "Is that good?" Tom asked from his position by the window. "It could be," Dr. Nguyen replied. "It might indicate his brain is starting to heal more actively, but I don't want to create false hope. These changes are subtle." Lisa had heard similar cautious statements throughout her nursing career. Doctors were trained to manage expectations, to protect families from the emotional roller coaster of premature celebration. "What's our next step?" she asked, slipping into the clinical language that sometimes helped her maintain composure. "We're going to start very gradually reducing his sedation," Dr. Nguyen explained. "Not enough to bring him out of the coma yet, but enough to see how his brain responds. If these positive signs continue, we might be able to consider a more significant reduction in a few days." It wasn't the breakthrough Lisa had been hoping for, but it was something, a tiny crack in the door that had seemed firmly closed for weeks. That afternoon, a child life specialist named Penny stopped by with a portable speaker. "I thought this might be nice for music therapy," she explained. "More range than just playing songs from your phone." Lisa thanked her, grateful for the small kindness. The pediatric staff had been unfailingly compassionate, finding ways to make the sterile room feel more personal. As day turned to evening, Lisa connected her phone to the new speaker and played Aiden's favorite playlist again. She worked on a puzzle Penny had brought, occasionally looking up to describe the emerging picture to Aiden. "It's the underwater scene," she told him. "There's a shipwreck with treasure, and all kinds of fish. You'd probably know all their names. Remember when we went to the aquarium last summer and you corrected the tour guide about the difference between dolphins and porpoises? That poor high school kid was so embarrassed. The memory made her smile even as tears threatened. She wiped them away quickly. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry in front of Aiden, irrationally afraid that somehow he would sense her despair. Tom returned for the night shift around 8, bringing Chinese food that Lisa barely tasted. They reviewed what Dr. Nguyen had said about the EEG results, clinging to the slim possibility of progress. "I'm going to stay at the apartment tonight," Lisa said reluctantly. "Nurse Valerie practically ordered me to get a proper night's sleep. They're going to call if anything changes with the medication adjustment." Tom nodded. "I'll be here. Go rest." The small apartment felt empty and strange after the constant noise and activity of the hospital. Lisa showered mechanically, then called her mother for their nightly update. She sat on the edge of the bed afterward, suddenly unsure what to do with herself without the constant vigilance that had defined her days for nearly a month. She picked up a framed photo from the bedside table. Aiden, at the beach last summer, laughing as waves crashed around his knees. His missing front tooth gave his smile a mischievous quality that perfectly captured his personality. Looking at his vibrant, animated face in the photo made the contrast with his current stillness even more painful. Sleep came fitfully, her mind racing with possibilities both wonderful and terrible. Around 3 in the morning, she finally drifted into deeper sleep, exhaustion winning over anxiety. The shrill ring of her phone jolted her awake. She fumbled for it in the darkness, heart pounding, instantly alert. The clock read 3:17 a.m. day 30. "Hello?" she answered, her voice tight with fear. Late-night calls were rarely good news in hospitals. "Lisa, it's Tom." His voice sounded strange, shaky but not grief-stricken. There was something else there, something she couldn't immediately identify. "You need to come back now." "What happened?" she demanded, already out of bed and reaching for her clothes, phone pinned between ear and shoulder. "Is he okay?" He moved. "Lisa." He squeezed my hand when I was talking to him. Then his eyelids fluttered. The nurse saw it too, They're paging Dr. Nguyen now. Lisa froze, one leg in her jeans. Are you sure it wasn't just a reflex? I'm sure, Tom said, his voice breaking. I was telling him about that camping trip we took last year, when he caught that huge fish and I felt his fingers tighten around mine. Lisa, I think he's waking up. The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. For weeks, she'd imagined this moment, played it out in countless variations in her mind. Now that it might actually be happening, she felt dizzy with a dangerous mixture of hope and terror. I'm coming, she said, pulling on shoes without socks. I'll be there in 5 minutes. She drove through empty streets, running a red light at a deserted intersection, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. Prayers and pleas tumbled through her mind in a chaotic stream. Please let this be real. Please let him come back to me. Please let him still be him. The hospital's emergency entrance glowed like a beacon in the pre-dawn darkness. Lisa parked haphazardly and ran through the automatic doors, flashing her visitor badge at the security guard who recognized her instantly and waved her through. The elevator seemed unbearably slow. When it finally opened on the pediatric floor, she sprinted down the hallway, ignoring curious glances from the night staff. Outside Aiden's room, she paused, suddenly afraid of what waited inside. Dr. Nguyen emerged from the doorway, his face serious but with something new in his expression, a cautious optimism she hadn't seen before. Lisa, he said quietly, we've seen some promising signs. He's showing increased responsiveness to stimuli. We're going to continue reducing the sedation very gradually. Can I see him? She asked, already moving toward the door. Of course. Talk to him. Let him hear your voice. Inside, Tom stood by the bed, still holding Aiden's hand. He looked up as Lisa entered, tears streaming down his face. He squeezed my hand again. He whispered. Twice now. Lisa approached the bed slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. Aiden looked the same, eyes closed, face relaxed, motionless, yet somehow different. There was a subtle change she couldn't quite define, a shift in the quality of his stillness. She took his other hand, leaning close to his ear. Aiden, she said softly, clearly. It's Mom. I'm here. If you can hear me, squeeze my hand. She waited, seconds stretching like hours, barely breathing. Then she felt it, the slightest pressure against her palm, so faint she might have imagined it if she hadn't been watching his fingers curl almost imperceptibly around hers. Oh my God, she gasped, looking up at Tom with wide eyes. He's in there. He's coming back to us. The hospital room transformed in the hours that followed Aiden's first responsive movement. What had been a quiet, somber space became a hub of activity as nurses and doctors came and went, checking monitors, adjusting medication drips, and recording every tiny change. Lisa didn't leave Aiden's side, not even for a moment. She held his hand, watching intently for any flicker of movement, any sign that her son was continuing his journey back to consciousness. His vital signs are strengthening, Nurse Valerie noted, adjusting one of the monitors. Blood pressure is more responsive, heart rate more variable. These are all good signs. Dr. Nguyen arrived shortly after sunrise, his normally reserved demeanor showing hints of excitement. We're going to continue reducing the sedation very gradually, he explained to Lisa and Tom. It's like slowly turning up the dimmer switch on a light. Too fast could overwhelm his system. Too slow might not give us the progress we're hoping for. What should we expect? Tom asked, his voice hoarse from a night without sleep. It's different for every patient, Dr. Nguyen replied honestly. There's rarely a dramatic moment like in movies where someone suddenly sits up and starts talking. It's usually a process, small movements, eye-opening, perhaps sounds before words. And there will likely be periods of wakefulness followed by long periods of sleep as his brain continues to heal. Lisa nodded, mentally preparing herself for a new kind of waiting game. After 30 days of complete stillness, even the smallest signs of life felt miraculous. Throughout that morning, Aiden's fingers continued to move occasionally in response to voices. Once, when Lisa mentioned his beloved cat Rocket, his eyelids fluttered noticeably. Each tiny response sent waves of joy and hope through the room. By early afternoon, Word had spread throughout the pediatric floor. Staff members who had cared for Aiden over the past month found reasons to stop by, their faces showing genuine happiness at the development. "I knew that kid was a fighter," said Miguel, the day nurse who had been with them since the beginning. "Something about him. I just had a feeling." Physical therapist Diane arrived for her usual session, but paused at the foot of the bed. "Let's try something different today," she suggested. She took Aiden's foot in her hand and pressed firmly on the sole. "Aiden, can you try to push against my hand?" Everyone watched, barely breathing. After a moment, so brief Lisa almost missed it, Aiden's foot moved, pressing weakly against Diane's palm. "Excellent," Diane beamed. "That's deliberate movement. He's responding to commands." The small victory brought fresh tears to Lisa's eyes. Every tiny movement was a step away from the abyss that had threatened to swallow her son. As afternoon turned to evening, Dr. Ningyan returned with Dr. Clark, the pediatric neurologist who had been consulting on Aiden's case. "We've reviewed the latest readings," Dr. Clark said, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "His brain activity continues to increase. We're going to make another small reduction in the sedation overnight." "When will he fully wake up?" Lisa asked, the question she'd been holding back all day finally spilling out. The doctors exchanged glances. "It's still too early to say," Dr. Clark answered gently. "The brain is incredibly complex. We need to be patient and let Aiden set the pace." That night, Tom insisted that Lisa get some rest at the apartment. "You've been up for almost 24 hours straight," he pointed out. "I'll call the second anything changes, I promise." Reluctantly, Lisa agreed. The emotional roller coaster of the day had left her physically drained. She kissed Aiden's forehead, whispering, "I'll be back soon, buddy. Keep fighting." She had just settled into bed at the apartment when her phone rang. Her heart leapt into her throat as she answered. "Tom?" "Lisa." He opened his eyes. Tom said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Just for a few seconds, but they were open." He looked right at me. "I'm coming back," she said immediately, already reaching for her clothes. "The doctors said it might happen again overnight," Tom continued. "They've reduced the sedation a bit. More." When Lisa arrived back at the hospital, the night nurse met her at the elevator. "He's been showing increased movement," she reported excitedly. "Dr. Nguyen has been notified. He's on his way in." In Aiden's room, Tom sat by the bed, looking simultaneously exhausted and energized. "His eyes have opened 3 times now," he said as Lisa rushed to the bedside. "Just for seconds each time, but definitely open." Lisa took Aiden's hand in hers. "Hey, sweetie," she said softly. "Mom's back. Can you open your eyes for me?" They waited. The only sound in the room, the steady beep of monitors. Then slowly, Aiden's eyelids fluttered and lifted. Unfocused eyes stared upward for a brief moment before closing again. "That's it," Lisa gasped. "That's it, Aiden. You're doing so great." Over the next few hours, these brief moments of wakefulness came and went. Sometimes his eyes would track slightly toward a voice before closing again. Once, he seemed to furrow his brow in response to the blood pressure cuff inflating around his arm. Dr. Nguyen arrived shortly before midnight, quickly reviewing the chart and examining Aiden himself. "This is excellent progress," he confirmed. "His Glasgow Coma scale score has improved significantly." "What happens now?" Lisa asked. "We'll continue decreasing sedation overnight," Dr. Nguyen explained. "By morning, he should be mostly free of the medications that have kept him in the coma. Then it will be up to his brain to continue the awakening process naturally." Neither Lisa nor Tom could bear to leave after that. They took turns dozing in the recliner while the other kept watch, alert for any change in Aiden's condition. Dawn broke on day 31 with soft light filtering through the hospital blinds. Lisa, who had been awake for the last hour watching Aiden's face, noticed his breathing pattern change slightly. His eyes began to move beneath closed lids. "Aiden?" she called softly. "Can you hear me, sweetheart?" His eyelids fluttered, then opened. This time, instead of the vacant stare from the night before, his eyes seemed to focus briefly on her face. "That's it," she encouraged, squeezing his hand. "I'm right here." Tom woke in the recliner and quickly moved to the bedside. "Hey, buddy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Aiden's lips moved slightly, though no sound came out. His fingers twitched in Lisa's grasp. "Don't try to talk yet," she soothed. "Just rest. We're right here." Dr. Nguyen arrived for early rounds, pleased with what he found. "The sedation has been completely discontinued," he confirmed. "Any wakefulness now is coming entirely from his own brain function, which is exactly what we want to see." Throughout the morning, Aiden's periods of wakefulness gradually lengthened. His eyes tracked movement more consistently. Once, when a tray clattered in the hallway, he startled slightly at the noise, another good sign that his brain was processing sensory input. The neurologist team visited mid-morning, conducting various tests. They shined lights in his eyes, tested reflexes, and spoke simple commands. Aiden's responses were minimal but present. A finger twitch when asked to move his hand, a slight turn of his head toward a sound. "This is very encouraging," Dr. Clark told Lisa and Tom afterward. "He's showing purposeful responses. It's still early, but these are positive indicators." By early afternoon, news of Aiden's improving condition had spread through the hospital. Lisa's former co-workers from the medical clinic sent a basket of snacks and coffee gift cards. Aiden's teacher stopped by briefly, leaving a card signed by the entire class. "The whole school is rooting for him," she told Lisa with tears in her eyes. Around 3 o'clock, while Lisa was gently applying lip balm to Aiden's dry lips, she noticed his eyes tracking her movements more deliberately than before. "Aiden," she said, "can you blink if you can hear me?" After what seemed like an eternity, he blinked, slowly, deliberately. Lisa's heart soared. "Tom, did you see that? He blinked on purpose." Tom leaned in, his face alight with cautious hope. "Aiden, buddy, can you do that again? Blink if you can hear us." Another deliberate blink. The moment felt monumental, a clear bridge between the unresponsive boy of yesterday and the awakening child before them. For the first time in 31 days, Lisa felt certain that Aiden, her Aiden, was truly coming back to them. Nurse Miguel entered to check vitals and noticed the excitement. "What happened?" He blinked on command, Lisa explained, unable to keep the joy from her voice. "Twice," Miguel grinned. "Let's try something." He pressed the nurse call button, causing a soft chime. "Aiden, did you hear that sound? Blink if you did." Aiden blinked. "Amazing," Miguel said, updating the chart. "I'm going to page Dr. Nguyen." While they waited for the doctor, Lisa continued talking to Aiden, her voice stronger and more animated than it had been in weeks. "You're doing so well, buddy. Everyone's so proud of you. Rocket misses you. Grandma says he sleeps on your bed every night. And your friends at school can't wait to see you." Aiden's eyes remained open longer this time, tracking from Lisa to Tom and back again. His expression remained blank, but there was something different in his gaze, a growing awareness that hadn't been there before. Dr. Nguyen arrived quickly, his face lighting up when Miguel demonstrated Aiden's new responsiveness. "This is excellent," he said, conducting his own quick assessment. "Let's try something else." He held up 2 fingers in front of Aiden. "Aiden, how many fingers am I holding up? Can you blink twice for 2? After a moment, Aiden blinked twice. The simple cognitive task, recognizing the number and responding appropriately, sent a wave of emotion through the room. It wasn't just reflexive movement anymore. Aiden was thinking, processing, responding. "I'd like to remove the breathing tube," Dr. Nguyen said. "His respiratory function has been stable, and being able to vocalize might help him communicate." The procedure to remove the tube was quick, but uncomfortable. Aiden grimaced as the nurse suctioned his mouth afterward, another encouraging sign of sensory awareness. "There we go," Dr. Nguyen said encouragingly. "Much better without that tube, isn't it, Aiden?" Aiden's lips moved slightly, though no sound emerged. His throat would be sore and unused to speech after so many days of intubation. "Don't try to talk yet," Lisa advised, offering a small ice chip to soothe his throat. "Just rest." But Aiden's eyes found hers, more focused than they had been all day. His lips moved again, and this time a whisper emerged. raspy and barely audible but unmistakable. Mom. The single word hung in the air like a miracle. Lisa's vision blurred with tears as she leaned closer. Yes, baby, I'm here. Mom's right here. Tom's hand found her shoulder, squeezing tightly as he fought his own tears. Aiden's eyes drifted closed again, the brief moment of clarity exhausting his limited energy. But the word echoed in the room, a promise of more to come. He said, Mom, Lisa whispered, looking up at Dr. Nguyen with wonder in her eyes. The doctor nodded, his professional demeanor softening with genuine happiness. The first word is often the most meaningful one, he said. This is a significant milestone, though there's still a long road ahead. As Aiden slept peacefully, a natural sleep now, not the artificial stillness of the coma, Lisa stood by the window looking out at the late afternoon sun. For 30 days she had lived in a state of suspended animation, her world narrowed to monitors and medical reports and the unchanging form of her son. Now, with a single word, everything had changed. The future, which had seemed so dark and uncertain for so long, suddenly held light again. Mom, she repeated softly to herself, the most beautiful word she had ever heard. The days that followed Aiden's first word blended together in a whirlwind of medical evaluations, small triumphs, and new challenges. Lisa quickly learned that waking from a coma wasn't the end of their journey. It was just the beginning of a different one. On day 32, they moved Aiden out of the ICU to the pediatric neurology floor. His new room had a window with a view of the hospital garden and colorful murals on the walls. It felt less like a place of crisis and more like a place of healing. Dr. Clark, the neurologist, sat down with Lisa and Tom to outline what lay ahead. Aiden's making remarkable progress, but I want to prepare you for the road we're facing, she explained, her tone gentle but direct. Brain injuries are complex. Recovery isn't linear. What exactly does that mean? Tom asked, his hand finding Lisa's across the small conference table. It means there will be good days and harder days, Dr. Clark explained. Skills might emerge, then seem to disappear, then return again. Patience will be your greatest ally. Lisa nodded, already seeing the pattern in Aiden's early recovery. The day after he'd said, Mom, he'd been less responsive, sleeping more and communicating less. The doctors assured her this was normal. His brain was working incredibly hard and needed rest. By day 34, Aiden was speaking in short phrases. His voice remained hoarse, but his personality began shining through. The fog of injury. Thirsty, he managed one afternoon, pointing weakly at the water cup. Lisa helped him take small sips through a straw, pride swelling in her chest at this simple act of communication. Good job telling me what you need, she praised. Later that same day, he frowned at the hospital lunch tray. No Jell-O. Gross. The small complaint, so normal, so perfectly Aiden, made Lisa laugh out loud, tears springing to her eyes. Tom, who had been dozing in the corner chair, woke to the sound. What's happening? He asked groggily. Our son just complained about hospital food, Lisa replied, still laughing. Just like his old self. Not everything came back so easily. When physical therapist Diane tried to help Aiden sit up on day 35, they discovered his balance was severely affected. His left side was noticeably weaker than his right, his fingers fumbling when asked to grasp a small ball. This is very common with traumatic brain injuries, Diane assured them when she saw their worried faces. The brain pathways that control these movements need to be rebuilt or rerouted. With the right therapy, most kids make huge improvements. Occupational therapist Ben arrived the next day with an assessment disguised as games. He watched as Aiden tried to stack blocks, name pictures, and follow simple directions. He's showing mild to moderate cognitive effects, Ben explained afterward. His memory, especially of recent events, is spotty. His attention span is shorter than it would have been before. But his language skills are coming back nicely and his personality seems largely intact. Lisa clung to those words. Personality largely intact. Like a lifeline. That was what mattered most. The essence of Aiden, his spirit, his humor, his heart, all still there beneath the injury. On day 37, speech therapist Kelly arrived with flashcards and puzzles. Aiden grew frustrated quickly when he couldn't find the words he wanted. "Stupid," he muttered, pushing the cards away with his good hand. "It's not stupid, and neither are you," Kelly said firmly. "Your brain got hurt and now it's healing. This is like physical therapy but for your words." Aiden scowled but allowed her to continue. By the end of the session, he'd correctly named 15 objects, a victory Kelly celebrated with high fives that made him smile despite himself. The first major setback came on day 39 when Aiden developed a high fever. Panic gripped Lisa as doctors ordered blood tests and scans, fearing infection or inflammation in the brain. Those 24 hours of waiting for results brought back the terror of the early days after the accident. Secondary infections are fairly common during recovery, Dr. Nguyen explained as he prescribed antibiotics. His immune system is still compromised from the prolonged hospitalization. The fever broke on day 41 and Aiden returned to his therapy schedule, though noticeably weaker than before. Each time he had to relearn a skill he'd just mastered, Lisa felt her heart break a little. But each time he fought back with a determination that amazed everyone around him. "Tough kid," physical therapist Diane commented after watching Aiden struggle through exercises that had been easier before the fever. "He doesn't give up." By day 45, discussions about discharge planning began. The word home brought both joy and terror to Lisa. Joy at the thought of getting Aiden out of the hospital environment he'd been in for so long. Terror at the responsibility of continuing his care without the safety net of medical staff just steps away. "We'll set you up with home health support," social worker Jen assured her. "Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, all can come to your home initially, and we'll schedule regular outpatient follow-ups." Tom, who had been staying in a hotel near the hospital for weeks, faced decisions about returning to Seattle. "I can take a leave of absence," he suggested during a quiet moment when Aiden was napping. "Work remotely for a while until he's more stable." Lisa nodded gratefully. Their shared concern for Aiden had bridged many of the gaps their divorce had created. They weren't a couple again, but they were partners in this new challenge, a team for their son. Day 48 brought a visit from Mrs. Thompson, Aiden's fourth-grade teacher and two of his closest friends. The school had prepared the boys carefully for what to expect, but nothing could fully prepare children for seeing their friend so changed. Aiden brightened immediately when they entered, sitting up straighter in his bed. "Jack! Ryan!" he exclaimed, his speech still slightly slurred but recognizable. The boys hesitated briefly, then rushed forward, excited to show Aiden the cards their class had made. Mrs. Thompson held back, wiping tears as she watched the interaction. "Thank you for bringing them," Lisa said quietly. "He needed this." "The whole class asks about him every day," Mrs. Thompson replied. "They're saving his seat." The visit exhausted Aiden, but the smile lingered on his face even after he fell asleep. That night, he slept more peacefully than he had since waking from the coma. On day 50, Lisa arrived at the hospital to find Aiden already awake and working with Ben, the occupational therapist. They were practicing buttoning a shirt, a simple task made difficult by Aiden's lingering left-side weakness. "Almost got it," Ben encouraged as Aiden's fingers fumbled with the button. "Take your time." Lisa watched silently from the doorway, her heart full. 2 weeks ago, Aiden couldn't even sit up without support. Now he was working on dressing himself. The progress wasn't linear, as Dr. Clark had warned, but it was undeniably there. Later that afternoon, Dr. Nguyen and Dr. Clark came together for a family meeting. Tom had brought Aiden's favorite chocolate milkshake from the diner across from the hospital, and Aiden was happily slurping it as the doctors entered. "We think Aiden is ready to start planning for discharge," Dr. Clark announced with a smile. "Not immediately, but within the next week or so, depending on how he continues to progress." The words hung in the air like a gift, one Lisa had begun to think might never come during those long, dark days of the coma. "Really?" Tom asked, his voice cracking slightly. "He can go home?" He'll need extensive outpatient therapy, Dr. Nguyen cautioned. And your home will need some modifications, for safety. But yes, we believe he's ready to continue his recovery outside the hospital setting. Aiden looked up from his milkshake, his face serious. Home? With Rocket? Lisa nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Yes, baby. Home with Rocket. The smile that spread across Aiden's face was worth every second of the 50 days they'd spent in the hospital. The following days were a flurry of preparation. Lisa's mother helped modify the house, installing a temporary ramp over the front steps, moving Aiden's bedroom to the first floor, securing loose rugs that could cause falls. Tom coordinated with his employer for extended remote work. Lisa learned how to assist with Aiden's exercises, recognize signs of fatigue, and manage his medication schedule. On the morning of day 56, Aiden sat in a wheelchair wearing real clothes for the first time in nearly 2 months. Jeans, a clean t-shirt with dinosaurs on it, and new sneakers with Velcro closures instead of laces. His hair had grown back unevenly around the healing surgical scar, and his left arm still rested in a supportive sling, but his eyes were bright with excitement. Ready to blow this popsicle stand? He asked, using one of his father's favorite phrases. Lisa laughed, smoothing his hair gently around the scar. More than ready. The hospital staff, who had become like family, gathered to say goodbye. Nurse Miguel presented Aiden with a small trophy he'd made from tongue depressors and cotton balls. For the bravest kid on the floor, he announced. Physical. Therapist Diane knelt by the wheelchair. Remember what we practiced, she said seriously. A little bit every day, even when it's hard. Dr. Nguyen shook Tom's hand, then Lisa's. He's made remarkable progress, he said quietly. But remember what we discussed, this is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be challenges ahead. Lisa nodded. She knew the statistics, the potential long-term effects of traumatic brain injury in children. Possible learning disabilities, attention issues, emotional regulation problems. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. But as they wheeled Aiden through the hospital corridors toward the exit, those concerns felt distant compared to the miracle of this moment. 56 days ago, she'd received the call that had stopped her heart. Her son had fallen, was unconscious, might not survive. 30 days of silence had followed. 30 days of watching his still form and praying for any sign of life. Now, as they reached the hospital doors, Aiden lifted his face toward the sunshine, streaming through the glass. Feels good, he murmured, closing his eyes briefly. Tom pushed the wheelchair forward as the automatic doors opened. Fresh air, real, non-hospital air, greeted them. Aiden breathed deeply, his smile widening. Mom, he said, looking back over his shoulder at Lisa. We made it. Those 3 simple words contained everything: acknowledgement of what they'd been through, recognition that they'd faced it together, hope for what lay ahead. Lisa squeezed his shoulder gently. Yes, buddy, we made it. As they helped Aiden into the car that would take him home, Lisa looked back at the hospital building where their lives had changed forever. She would never forget the fear, the grief, the long days of uncertainty. But stronger than those memories was the gratitude that filled her now, for the medical team that had saved her son, for Tom's unwavering support, for Aiden's incredible spirit, and most of all, for the simple fact that when she called his name now, he answered. 6 months later, as Lisa watched Aiden carefully climbing the steps of the school bus for his first day back at school, moving slower than before but moving independently, she remembered those 56 days that had seemed endless. The boy who waved goodbye to her wasn't exactly the same as the one who had left for school that fateful morning last spring. The brain injury had left its marks, both visible and invisible. But as he turned back to give her a lopsided grin, that smile that was so perfectly, uniquely Aiden, she saw all that mattered. Her son had come back to her, different in some ways, but whole in all the ways that truly counted. Love you to Pluto and back, Mom, he called before disappearing into the bus. Love you more, she whispered, waving until the bus was out of sight.